Just before boarding, the man suddenly noticed something eerily strange. His flight number was 1015, today was October 15th, and the departure time had been delayed from 9:30 to exactly 10:15. These coincidences left Bob with an unsettling feeling, though he couldn't spot anything obviously wrong as he looked around. Once on the plane, a stranger in the back cabin nodded at him. Bob politely nodded back, then discovered an MP3 player tucked in the seat pocket in front of him. It was playing a mysterious story about Flight 1015, the very flight he was on. Curious, he put on the headphones and found that the story being told matched exactly what was happening in the cabin at that moment. The flight attendant was giving the safety demonstration, and it had started raining outside. Bob lifted the window shade to check, and sure enough, a heavy downpour was pelting the windows. But then the voice on the MP3 said that in 1 hour, this plane would vanish from radar forever. Bob found it absurd, but suddenly the plane shuddered as it took off. The MP3 immediately began discussing the mystery of the plane crash, starting with Captain Donna. At that exact moment, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Bob quickly paused the recording and asked the passenger next to him if the captain's name was Donna, but the man looked completely bewildered. He hadn't even been listening to the announcement. Unable to contain himself, Bob told the passenger about the bizarre content he'd been hearing on the MP3 and wanted him to listen too, but the man immediately moved away in disgust. Bob put the headphones back on. The story continued, saying that at 10:21, a bird would strike the plane. Just as the time hit 10:21, there was a violent impact. Bob shot up from his seat, frantically throwing off the headphones as waves of terror crashed over him. He rushed to the bathroom to calm himself, but afterward the flight continued smoothly, as if none of the other passengers had felt the collision. Bob began to wonder if he was hallucinating. After fastening his seatbelt, he pressed the call button to summon a flight attendant, hoping to confirm whether a bird had actually hit the plane. The attendant replied impatiently that there were no birds at this altitude. When Bob asked her to check with the captain, she told him to quiet down. The argument drew attention from other passengers, and Bob realized that perhaps the story was making him overly paranoid, so he stopped pressing the issue. But as soon as the flight attendant left, the man who had greeted him earlier suddenly sat down behind him. He confirmed that a bird had indeed struck the plane. His name was Beaumont, a former pilot who had once worked with Captain Donna and was all too familiar with these situations. He explained that the crew typically doesn't inform passengers about such incidents. His words sent Bob spiraling into anxiety again. He put the headphones back on and continued listening. The plane would disappear without a trace at 11:15, and it was already 10:30, time was running out. Sweat immediately beaded on his forehead as he realized he couldn't just sit there and wait. He had to find clues quickly to prevent the disaster from happening.